Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VIDA podcast, where we help educate military veterans and their spouses on opportunities in Web3. Our plan is to host a series of industry leaders, many of whom are veterans or spouses themselves, so that we can learn about their journey down the crypto rabbit hole while understanding opportunities for transitioning veterans in the industry. I'm Chris Perkins, president of CoinFund. I'm a combat Marine veteran who spent 15 years on Wall Street before transitioning into the crypto space. And before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsor, Luca, who's dedicated their time and resources to make this podcast possible. For our 20th episode, we'll be speaking with Naval Academy graduate and Marine, Stephanie Vaughan, head of operations at Sommelier Finance, founder and director of SS Ventures, and COO and co-founder of 7 Seas Strategy. Welcome, Steph.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming. So first, we'd love to hear about your background. How did you get into the military?
September 11th happened when I was 16 years old, and my dad was actually supposed to be in the second tower, but his meeting was moved the day before. But we thought that that's where he was during that whole morning and then afternoon until we could get a hold of him. And I think that event happening in high school inspired me to join the Naval Academy. And then from the Naval Academy, I went into the Marine Corps.
It's funny. It's funny how our careers tracked, because I was a Naval Academy graduate Marine in Camp Fuji when that went down, and my sister was actually down there by the towers and was treated. So it's amazing how 9/11 impacted so many of us. So you went to the Naval Academy. I understand you studied quantitative economics. What was that experience like?
It was. I liked it. It's a little bit different, than how civilians now would view quantitative economics, but it was the closest thing to kind of operations analysis. I was able to use that experience actually working later in my career with General O'Donoghue, doing like a force structure review group or doing like a war game between, just different in order to design the new force at that time that was moving down in personnel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So a couple of questions, probably the most important one. Why didn't you go to West Point? And then why the Marine Corps?
I didn't. I actually am from that part of New York, so I knew it was not a good part to live in. So that was probably the number one reason, it being so close to my home. And then I had an uncle that lived near the Naval Academy, but I really wanted to go into the Marine Corps early on. At one point I switched my mind, but then kind of went back. Yeah.
Awesome. And why the Marine Corps?
I just felt that the Marine Corps, out of every other force, has the people that are, I feel like, the best leaders, the most disciplined, and really can do multiple things, where I feel like the Army or Navy or Air Force is so large that people focus on one specific piece, where Marines focus on the planning and the whole kind of mission. Like every Marine's a rifleman, every Marine officer is like a provisional rifle platoon commander. You should be able to jump in everywhere. So that's why.
Yeah, totally. This is going to be a really easy conversation for me. I think we have a shared outlook. Can you tell us about your experience in the Marine Corps? Where were you stationed? What did you do?
So I was a communications officer. I was supposed to go to Hawaii after the base or after comm school, but last minute, the only billet in Hawaii was at a regiment level, at a battalion level, and so women like combos at that time could not like serve in that billet. So I ended up getting switched out to Okinawa. I went on the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out there with the ACE, or like the Aviation Command element. So I was the commo for that element. And we did like different exercises around the South Pacific, in Thailand, in like Cambodia, off of Sri Lanka, in Australia, in Korea, all around, and of course in Japan. And then I came back to the US. I worked as General Donahue's aide, a 1-star like at the time, and he worked doing the force structure review group, which like was downsizing the force at that time. I mentioned a little bit of this before, and he also worked on the capabilities for the Marine Corps. And so I would go with him to kind of look at all the new, not quite the acquisition stage yet, but what new capabilities needed to be met in order to meet like the future of warfare. So after that, I went to Afghanistan. I did like different force protection surveys where you look at different vulnerabilities of bases. So I went to like bases, fobs that were pretty far out there, but the team was a joint team, so I actually went to both Army and Marine bases, like all along the border, mostly of Pakistan, but in the north and south.
Wow, that's pretty
And after
impressive.
that, yeah, I got right back from Afghanistan, and like 3 weeks later, I was in Columbia Business School because I had got in right before I deployed. So
Oh, that's amazing. What an incredible career. So I was stationed in Camp Hansen in Okinawa. I think that's where the 31st MEU is, right?
yeah, so I went up. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I was up at Camp Hansen during that time. And then like what we like, I came out of the comm squadron, so I was down in Foster. But what's the one above Hansen? Is it
Schwab.
Schwab? Yeah, I went up to Schwab like to take a course. Yeah, uh, yeah, like the up there. So
When you think about your career in the Marine Corps, were there any special lessons that you took away, or anything that helped position you and help perpetuate you and set you off into your civilian career?
um, lessons. I mean, I guess like I sort of said, the Marine Corps maybe lesson that's different than like um other services is like really taking accountability for every part of what is the mission that everybody's working on, and being able to jump in then to those different positions to make sure that this is what is accomplished. So I think like I initially worked as an investment banker, and after a few years, I realized that I wanted to switch over to tech. But I think working in tech and working like specifically, in the startup side, especially like in crypto, I'm able to do that.
Yeah. So a lot of transitioning vets are always trying to decide, do I just like jump right into it and go into tech or finance or go into the job force, or do I go to B school? You went to B
Yeah.
school. Can you tell
Yes.
us about that decision?
I would say that it gave me time to understand what it's like to be a civilian, which is very different. And even after B school, like it took a time like to understand what it's like to work as a civilian. I think it would be hard to jump kind of right into the startup world because it is very different. Like the less a lot of things, although they're some of the skills are the same, if you don't understand finance and how the civilian world like works, you're not going to be able to operate as well. So it gave me that time to understand. Like one thing I think in the military, you take you sort of you think that you're the best, you're a Marine, and everybody else is just a lazy civilian, and you get out and you realize that's not true. And you really and everybody is really competitive within especially the business world, and so you really have to kind of adjust in the way where it's there are people that are kind of your people and your like group that you can trust, but I think learning how to trust different groups of people is a lot different. Where the military, everybody they're giving you time to go to the dentist and making sure that that's done. Like nobody's making sure that you go to the dentist. No one's making sure like that you're in good health. Like you have to do all of this by yourself. So
Yeah, totally. I think the other thing it gives you is a really good network. So a lot of vets
Yeah.
as they transition, we've got a great network. We're all vets. We take care of each other. But getting that civilian network in B school, I never went to B school. I wish I had. But and I think that on top of the time that you get to figure out who you are and what you want to do is super helpful. I agree with you there. So you end up in investment banking. To tell us about that, and then how did you go from there into crypto? Would love to know that story.
Knew I wanted to work in investment banking. I ended up working at Houlihan Lokey, which is a mid market. They do a lot of restructuring there. I did a lot of mid market, like M&A, like which is essentially a lot of LBOs and selling and doing big auctions of companies, industrial companies to small private equity firms. So I enjoyed it. It was a really good experience. We had a lot of deal flow. We did a lot, of pitches, and then also like a lot of deals. And the auctions were big, which is different than other parts of investment banking. So from like that, I felt like I had a really good base for finance. Um, you had to get, and I had to get used to selling something, which is very different than any experience in the military, where you sort of like people are very humble, I feel like, and they don't want to sell themselves even when they get out. It takes a long time for people to transition, but to learn how to sell, um, I had that time like as an investment banker. I left and tried to do venture debt a little bit for a few months with a group of people, and started getting, and they had wanted to have a veteran focus on the venture debt, and I found, like, I went to a conference and met Mark Rockefeller, and he asked me to help him like fundraise for the Series B for Street Shares. So I went down, and Street Shares at the time was a veteran focused small business lender. And so I went down to DC for a year. Mark's partner, the COO there, Vicky Conson, he came out of Citibank and taught me like sort of everything about commercial banking and really lending that I know, which is a very different experience, than I had in industrials, and I had kind of learned the other side of the balance sheet. When I had initially left, I had been working with a person who wrote for Lending Times, so I had been in lending then for a little while, and I felt like marketplace lending, or I mean, it's not that I felt like this, but marketplace lending was like everything was either being purchased, like
Yep.
Amex purchased Cabbage, like everything was sort of getting either rolled up into a bank or dying. And crypto started kind of taking off. So crypto at the time seemed to be the true um, ability to do peer-to-peer lending, which is where like where with marketplace lending, everybody ended up chasing the lowest kind of cost of capital, and what we thought could be replaced by people on the other side ended up being replaced, with different warehouse vehicles, like from banks, and then they ended up becoming banks, like SoFi is another example. So that was like why I made the transition. I initially left, and with one partner, we were doing like ICO advisory, just like by ourselves. And I was out in Asia again after having been out there with the Marines. It was a very different experience, but I quickly realized like that I wanted to be within a company, and I met David Chom and joined Elixir, which is a quantum like resistant, and uses the C mix, which is the technology that David invented, sort of similar to Tor, secure messenger, that has a blockchain behind it as well. And so I worked there for a number of years, and then I decided I wanted to go back to why I joined crypto, which wasn't this sort of deep privacy side, but the side like for the finance side. And so I went back and started working with a couple companies. Like I started my own company, that's SS Ventures, and started doing operations and compliance consulting there, still with a number of people. And then I joined Sommelier, and out of Sommelier, we started Seven Cs, both helping, with operations on both sides of those. And that's a lot closer to kind of what I wanted to work in. I don't know if you know what Sommelier or Seven Cs does, so I can get into that
Oh,
if
I
you
know a
want me
little
to.
bit, but maybe you can start by telling us about the Cosmos ecosystem and like, just generally the landscape of Sommelier, and maybe we can go from there because I think a lot of the folks that listen here are new to crypto, and so
Yeah.
they don't really understand all the ecosystem. So like maybe helping, I think consulting on compliance and operations is pretty accessible, but like when you say Sommelier finance, would be wonderful for people to
Yeah.
understand exactly where it is, how it works, and what it does.
So it actually is. I mean, I think we get labeled as being in the Cosmos ecosystem, because we are a Cosmos project. But really, what we actually don't offer any strategies on Cosmos. The Cosmos ecosystem. I mean, it's an early project, in crypto. Kind of one of the original tokens. They launched a little bit later than others, but their idea is, that everybody uses the same standard for the what is like a layer one protocol. And so Sommelier uses the same standard in order to pass messages like to other protocols on Cosmos using, and then it all goes back to kind of what is like the Tendermint consensus. Sommelier is a layer one, it's a Cosmos layer one. So its token itself is on the Cosmos network, the SOM token. But what Sommelier does is it decentralizes strategies. You could think of it simply like that. And the way that it decentralizes strategies is, if any, like, so you can imagine a strategist has an idea for a strategy. They um, code that idea into a smart contract. That smart contract is on Ethereum. Sommelier Network has a number of validators on the system, kind of in line with what the standard is within Cosmos and IBC. Um, the validators uh, validate like the signal, but they limit like what the signal can do. So it's not like you can run a strategy and everybody can kind of input their money into a vault, and sommelier the strategist can just put that money anywhere. Like if they say their vault is a like a Bitcoin long vault, they can only buy and sell Bitcoin, so it limits what they can do. The validators validate this. They can also do other checks to make sure the transaction, or the signal rather, that they've given isn't malicious. And then they send that signal across a bridge to the Ethereum network where the smart contract is. And then the smart contract trades. I've spent a long time trying to build the protocol in order to be able to trade like the smart contracts into the Uni V3 pools. Um, and so like we launched a product called Real Yield USD. That's sort of, you could kind of equate it to like an ETF of treasury like bonds. And so anybody can put their money into this smart contract, like, or take it out at any time, and it's getting the kind of the best in class yields, like for across different stable coins, DAI, like USDC, and Tether. That, I mean, is a little bit like, I hope that might be a little bit complicated for people to understand.
So you said a lot of different things, and a lot of words that like people like you and I understand, like
Yeah, I
bridges,
know
like
it's going to be
tenement
hard. It's
consensus,
really hard to
IBC,
translate.
Cosmos, right? It is, but how did you learn all of this stuff, right? And the one thing I've found that's pretty cool is that everything is like open source. Like you can go to Twitter, you can go to Discord. If you have a passion for it, you can learn about everything. Like, how did you learn all this stuff? I guess is the question because there's no manual. You didn't learn it at Columbia, right? And
No.
it hasn't been around that long. Let's just be honest. Like most of this activity is really post what, like 20, Ethereum was born in 2014, 2015. So less than 10 years. So clearly, you got up to speed, Steph, like really quickly on some pretty complex things as you describe it. How did you learn all of this?
So I would say, I mean, I really like you just have to get out there. I I got out there when I first got into crypto, like doing ICO advisory, trying to figure out how to sell, at that point something and focusing on really, the compliance side. So I knew how to sell StreetShares had a product, a Reg A product called the Veteran Business Bond. So I knew like what a Reg A was, and I knew what the different Reg S, Reg D, what we could sort of do as far as like if these are securities, and started really looking at things from that angle. And then as I like learned more about that, I started learning more about the projects, and then like how do you sell like an ICO, or how do you sell a token, or how can you start to do all these different things in finance, because I understood finance from having gone to, Columbia and having worked in investment banking, which some people in crypto don't, and then see how exactly that works on the tech side, and then what the problems are, like MEV now, or different like, intents that people are using to kind of solve these problems. And so, and so it's just, I really had to just get out there and talk to different people and not be afraid to kind of be within this universe. But yeah, Twitter is a great place to learn a lot of information. I see you on Twitter. I went to a lot of the early stuff within crypto. Um, and a lot of those people that you still see around are the people that I'm, close with still, and I've learned from. So I feel like a lot of projects that I initially thought were not good projects because, I thought they weren't following the rules. Like Celsius is a good example. I always thought that like everybody, it didn't make sense to me how they could do that legally. Like they initially started comparing things to, you like a bank account, which I knew you couldn't do. And and that was like this is in like 2017, and right at the end, and I was like, this just something doesn't seem right here. And then they ended up doing so well at one point. I was like, I really cannot pick anything. But like, and then everything has sort of corrected back since FTX. I know enough, like from the Great Recession to understand how things can change very quickly. Even though I was in the Marine Corps at the time, like that, those the combined experiences have really helped me like understand all of this, and understand how everything has been related. So,
Yeah, like
but
that's the thesis behind VIDA, right? I hear you. Like I came in and there are certain things that I saw where I was like, there's no way that's going to last. And it oftentimes doesn't. And there's other times where I'm like, well, they're doing it right. And then you find out behind the scenes that maybe they weren't. So like the whole idea behind VIDA is like, gosh, there's so much innovation, right? You see it every day. You're talking, you're excited about it. There's so much value being created. But gosh, we need some operators to come in with the right ethics. And by the way, by and large, the preponderance of people I deal with every day are incredibly ethical, very smart. They want to do the right thing. They're building. But like the more veterans we get in the space, the better. I'm going to ask a controversial question because I have to, and it's something that really bothers me. Why don't we have what do we need to do to get more women into this space? Like to me, that's another big issue that we've seen. Like there are some incredible women in the Cosmos ecosystem. Like
yeah,
Yelena is out there, and there are some like
yeah.
amazing women in the space. But like I feel like we're still underrepresented, and it's a huge area of focus at our company. But how do you think about that, and what should we be doing? Not only vets, but women and women vets to the space.
I mean, it's a little bit like I feel like with fintech, maybe it's difficult because finance doesn't have a great reputation, for women. And then you put a sort of loose compliance environment around that, and it gets worse. I mean, I know a lot of things like since Me Too, I feel like the community at least has been more sensitive to all of these issues for women. I really don't have a great answer on how to attract more women. I think like being comfortable with women, like there's a lot of women in our company, compared our other founder or two of our founders, like Zaki is not a woman, obviously, but the other founder, Christy, is a woman. There are a lot of women being comfortable with women, like, having children, like, and being, working from home. I think just sort of allowing people to do that, and then, kind of encouraging people and telling them that they really can do this. Um, you know, I think I have a friend who also went to the Naval Academy. She started working. She just started working, helping me with compliance at one company, and ended up working, full time for another company. But I don't think she really could have gone into the space like without the sort of encouragement, that like you can figure this out and you can do this, and this like really isn't that hard. And then like especially with the work from home like environment, I think really helps women. I would just say like more encouraging people that they can do something where they probably think that they cannot, like because there's so much other things at home that people get focused on, but there's time in the day. Yeah.
Totally. I think that they definitely can, and we need more women, and more vets. You're a pretty busy woman. You're director of SS Ventures, right? You're doing the Seven
Yeah.
Seas strategy thing, and you're at Sommelier. Like, tell us about a typical day.
I guess like a typical day, I get up, I like get up at 6:30. I get my son like ready for his school. I walk him down there, drop him off. Or I get a coffee, walk him down there, drop him off. Walk back, and generally like I will start checking messages like on the way back. And a lot of our team works in Europe, and so we start to see kind of what happened overnight. I just seen that on the walk back. And then just getting into what the biggest task will be like for the day. So I mean, it could be a different meeting with like someone that I'm like consulting with, or it could be like we have a lot of business development meetings recently, like meeting with different funds. It could be doing something fundraising. Seven Seas is set up in BVI, and so we've done a lot to apply to the kind of the BVI sandbox, like meet with a lot of lawyers. So I'll do one or all of these things, meet different meetings throughout the day, depending on when people can meet, because it's very difficult, from this work at home environment, like if people can meet in the morning or, late evening. So I'll do these different meetings throughout the day. I think a lot end up happening between 2 to kind of, or, 12, I guess 12 here to kind of, 4 or 5. At 6 p.m., my nanny takes my son home. So I have that time with him, like from about 6 to 7:30. And then at 7:30, I will try to send out a few more emails. And then if there's any late calls that we have with Asia, like I'll wait up for, or even with Europe sometimes. Yeah. So
So,
that's a
so
typical day, a lot of work. Yeah, I definitely work out both days on the weekends and try to work out a couple days during the week as well, but it doesn't always happen. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it. It's so important because you can forget about all that after the Marine Corps. No one's telling you, like you said, to keep yourself in shape. And I think it's like a huge part of staying sane and like being an effective like at anything you do. So I'm glad you mentioned it. So
Yeah.
in crypto, we certainly go through cycles, and we've been going through this vicious bear market. And a lot of people are like, why would I come into this space? I personally think it's probably the most exciting time to ever come into the space as you enter it at a cyclical low. But what makes you excited about this crypto or this thing that's known as Web3?
So what makes me excited is really kind of I mean, like I said before, the finance side, anything that is securitized can be tokenized, and it can be tokenized in a way where it's transparent. What is contained within like the asset, and you're not kind of going to have a situation like you did in 2008. So I feel like from like that's my drive. Is this kind of transparent, decentralized network that anybody can participate in, and like reaches, sort of true, efficiency, if you could imagine that, or something close to that. Maybe like kind of like libertarian dream. I don't know. Like that's what my drive is. I really think we can, like, this technology allows for it. I think working through these different issues lately, like MEV and toxic flow, and figuring this out for the dexes and how this looks. Now that we've seen the kind of centralized piece fail again, we already knew that centralization was bad, from 2008. So seeing it fail in crypto, like, isn't surprising. It has nothing to do really with the technology. So I don't really worry in that sense that that's like a wrong bet. If anything, it makes me more sure like that finding something within DeFi is the answer.
I think that's totally right. And people like will say, "Oh, crypto is FTX." Well, to the contrary, it's like it was super centralized in the exact opposite of the ethos that we were trying to advance, which
Yeah,
is really interesting. I totally agree with you on that one. Um,
yeah.
Couple last questions. Like, what advice would you have for someone who's trying to break into the space?
I mean, I would just start like reaching out to people, or I would go on Twitter, and then I'd start kind of interacting with people on Twitter. I would, download and start playing with the different technologies that they're advertising. You could also go to a few different conferences. I would look for good ones, which you could figure out like through Twitter. There's a couple good ones going on right now in Europe. I mean, but to keep showing up at conferences and jump from one to one without working doesn't really make sense after a while. So but yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunities to just get out there and talk to people and kind of figure out what's going on, and just like start building. There's a ton of hackathons too you could join and meet different people from those hackathons.
That's awesome. And are you hiring across all of your different verticals? Doing any hiring
um,
right now?
so I guess like we are hiring a few people, but it's like I'm not hiring anybody for my own company, but I would say like, so, Seven Seas is going to be looking for a few people, and Sommelier, and we'll put those up like on our website, and tweet them out. But I would say this, we've always kind of put up different hires in every startup that I've worked at, and it's always the person that we hire is from a referral from somebody.
Of
I
course, yeah.
almost feel like, yeah, you never end up getting, yeah. I don't know if you have a similar experience.
Well, referrals come from networks, right? And
Yeah,
that's why networks like VIDA or any network, like that's why networking is so important, right?
yeah,
Because that every job that I've ever landed has been because of the efforts of a fellow vet, everyone. Um, and so like that's why I think building and investing in this network is so important. But I totally agree with that. All
yeah.
right, last question. How can people connect with you?
People can connect with me on Twitter. It's Good Stuff V. That's probably one of the best ways to reach me. Yeah, I would say reach out through Twitter. Don't reach out through LinkedIn. It's like almost impossible for me to reply right now. And then my email's like Stephanie at ssventures.io would be another great way. Yeah, but
Cool,
probably
Stephanie.
best
Thank you.
direct message through Twitter. Yeah,
Yeah, totally get that. Thank you so much for the discussion today. I learned a ton. I thought it was awesome, incredibly informative, and we're super lucky to have a leader like you in the space. So thanks again for coming on.
thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
And anytime. And thanks again to our sponsor, Luca. These guys are great. They do this for free every single time. We appreciate it. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about VIDA, like connect with us, please, on LinkedIn or Twitter. And if you have any suggestions on who we should bring on, please reach out to me at PerkinsCR97. Thanks again.